So it's August 12th, right? We're getting into school season. And there's a lot of students who have already gone back to college. There's some that have not. There are plenty that have gone even into elementary and high school, right? Uh, but I think a question that we should be asking is, should we actually go back? Are we in a safe time with COVID-19 where it makes sense to go back? So, a little while ago, I saw an article on Medium. God, I'm trying to remember. Oh, yes. So the premise of it was comparing how higher education and religious institutions are practicing what they should be doing. So a lot of religious institutions are being pretty smart and saying, maybe we shouldn't have in-person services. As much as we want it and we could use the money, it is safer to keep the members of our congregation at home, right? Which is great. I think that's exactly what they should be doing. Whereas a lot of institutions of higher education are planning on having, upwards of 7,000 students living in the dormitories. So, for example, as I stated, I live in the state of Wisconsin, so I want to talk about what the University of Wisconsin system has planned here, right? So they have plans like, we're going to have like mostly in-person classes. We're going to have some that are like partially in-person. We're going to have some that are online, right? But it just really depends on like the level of the class and how many people are going to be there. We're going to make sure that there's hand sanitizer and cleaning supplies in all the classrooms, and there's going to be we're going to like make sure people are getting tested randomly in their dorm. Like, you're going to go to their room and knock on their door and ask them to take a test without their consent, right? Basically, you have to be like, hey, you're going to take your test because you're here. The UW-Madison campus, for example, has a much more detailed plan, including things like, I think they're going to be doing all of those same sorts of things. What I read is that about 37% of classes are only going to be online, which, that sounds like a lot, right? That sounds like it could be a pretty, safe amount. I mean, it's just, it's just shy of half, but you have to remember how many students then are going to classes. Really, you should be going the opposite way and talking about it in that direction. You should be going 100 minus 37, which would mean that, 63% of classes are either in-person or hybrid, which is a lot of classes. And as you can imagine, right, there's a lot of staff that aren't really happy about this plan either, right? And even then, the University of Wisconsin-Madison, they have this like I said, there's a super detailed plan. They have a plan that after Thanksgiving, all students are going to be taking virtual classes anyway, up until exams, which granted is like a week or two later anyway. So, and that's based on the premise that, having people going home and coming back to campus all of a sudden is going to increase the risk of COVID-19 infections on campus. So why doesn't that logic apply for going back in the first place? That just doesn't make any sense, right? You would think that coming from wherever you are in the country and going to campus would automatically increase infections on campus. Like, duh. That's just obvious. They're going to require face masks indoors with certain accommodations. They're going to do physical distancing in classrooms like you'd want. But a lot of what places like this want is for students to take personal responsibility, which I totally, I talked about that in the very start. A lot of this is just doing what you think is safe, right? But this is not your personal life choosing to go out and do a thing. This institution that you have chosen to go to is making you return there, whether you like it or not, right? It's really a false choice to say that you are going back to campus. because you aren't really choosing to, you're just kind of going there because they said, because you happen to have an in-person class, so you have to be there. Sure, you could change it and maybe get an online class, but what are the odds of that working out, right? I mean, I feel incredibly fortunate in looking at my class schedule in that I got all online classes when I picked them back in, God, probably November or December. No, it might have been, what am I saying? I picked them in the spring. Duh. I picked probably around February, I want to say, was when I picked classes for this fall. And, my plan before all this whole global pandemic thing happened was to be on campus. And now that is fortunately no longer happening. If you can find a way, if you have all online classes and you happen to have a housing contract with your institution to get out of it, get out of it. Because there's no place in the nation, in the United States of America, that I would trust sending thousands of young people to. So if you want another great example, I think housing is really the main issue here, right? So let me give an example, right? Their plan is to reduce the overall density of dormitories and residence halls and all that sort of stuff. And the university is only going to limit access to university housing residents only, with no guests of any kind. Except you can, bring one person into your room from, another part of the building, which is somehow fine. But you have to do physical distancing and wear masks. This is an institution, the University of Wisconsin-Madison, that takes pride in the fact that a whole 25% of first-year students, or I think it's 1 in 4, so that'll be 25%, don't, or go through their whole first year without drinking illegally. 1 in 4. Which, when you say 1 in 4, sounds like a lot until you realize that's only 25% of students. They cannot sufficiently police underage students from drinking during regular times, but somehow we're going to make it so that in university housing there's not going to be large gatherings and people get sick and we're going to have to send them home anyway? Really? Is that what you think? I think that, again, this plan here, this is just one such example, is very detailed. It could work in theory, but in practice, it is not going to work. I give most places, depending on when they start, about 2 months tops before they send all their students home. Why? Because this is not going to work out in practice. They have about 7,500 to 8,000 students who live on campus, and they have 800 rooms set aside for isolation for when students get sick. Since athletes have been going back in June, there have already been 21 cases of COVID-19 among athletes. Granted, that's pretty good among 235 students over 2 months. I can't deny that. But that's still about 8% of athletes over 2 months. If you balloon that out to the rest of the campus, that's about 3,000 people who get sick. Because the campus size is about 40,000 people, give or take a few thousand. So, and that's obviously many more than 800 rooms. And that's not including staff, that's not including faculty in terms of professors and all that stuff. So, why should anybody be going back right now? Does that sound safe to anyone? And granted, there are also a lot of issues, like the president is specifically making a point of, well, if you don't have international students go back, we can't let them keep their visa, which is just throwing red meat to his base of well, we won't have these immigrants being here illegally, right? So, I don't know what much more I can say about this other than simply I feel terrible for all of the students who have to go back. I feel incredibly fortunate in not being forced to do so. If you do have to go to school in any capacity, including elementary or high school, I hope just make sure to do whatever you can to be safe. Even if there's peer pressure against it, please wear your face masks. There are some school districts that have a policy against wearing masks in general, but I would imagine that during this time they're gonna be not. They're they're gonna let you wear a mask of some kind because they want you to be safe. I know there are some kids who, this is just weird to me. Obviously, I just got out of high school 2 years ago. There's some kids who are like very clingy to each other, like they'll literally be at the lunch table and like laying on each other and stuff. Don't do that right now, please. Like, I get if you want to, I get why you want to. I mean, I guess I personally don't, because that's not something I would do or would want to do. But if that's something that you like to do, I understand. But it's more important that you stay healthy and not receive any long-reaching effects of this pandemic disease than doing this little thing right now to make you happy, okay? And I get that, especially in regards to like the mental toll it could be taking on you, potentially having to be home all the time and not being able to go out and do anything. But it is that important. Anyway, that's all I have to say on that. I think the next thing, the next thing on my notes here is the roundup of the not fifth, what am I saying? The 9th generation of consoles. How exciting of a time is it to live when you know that you have multiple new pieces of hardware coming in the great year 2020? Oh, the great year 2020. I say that sarcastically, quite clearly.